You're an experienced facilitator, and I wonder what your experience of facilitating RPL has been in the past.
Well, I have had experience, but it's sort of, it was a little frustrating because it was a lot of work and it didn't actually get off the ground. It's back in the beginning of the 90s, when of course RPL and competencies was quite new. At that stage I was the training manager, the inspector training manager for WorkCover, and we'd set up, we were in the process of setting up a whole competency program, and we wrote all the competencies, and then of course the issue of assessment and RPL came in, and it was linked to grades and pay scales and progression.
Right.
So it became quite political and quite complex, and people were making statements like everybody could be a senior inspector if they could show their competencies, which in reality is not really true, because an organisation can't afford to pay everyone to be at the senior level. So it was very interesting, it was very emotional, it got very political, industrial, because it was all about who has the right to assess somebody else and can we rely on their assessment, etc. So that's been my experience. I also at the same time had trainers under me, and I facilitated them to RPL into the TAA. I don't know if it was called the TAA, but it was the very first.
The Cat 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had to put a great big hard copy portfolio together, which was about 10 volumes. And I had to sign off stuff, and so they did that through UTS.
So not a very good experience from a facilitation point of view. What about from a learner perspective? Do you have experience of RPL from a learner perspective?
I have. I've 3 times opened the TAA to do an RPL into it, and 3 times I've closed it.
Right.
Because I've had a Masters in Adult Education since '92. I've been training since '92. I should have thought it would be very easy to do. And it's just the amount of time that I would need to commit to organising the information and validating the information in the way that was required was unreasonable. I think it would actually be quicker for me to do the qualification.
So did that experience help you in the planning and the thinking about?
Yes, it made me determined to make sure that what we were recognising was the skills that people demonstrated in their everyday work. Because the people that were picked to do this project were people who we know do this day in, day out. We virtually know they're competent, and we know they can prove it because we know the type of work they do, we know the type of documentation they have to prepare on a daily basis. We know they have to give daily toolbox talks and presentation. So the focus was to say, one, firstly, because I'd worked with CAF previously to develop their in-house training and to map that against the CRC competencies and to subsequently map that against the Cert 4 competencies. I'm aware of their internal training and assessment, so we looked at how we could recognise that, and then where they hadn't completed that training or where there wasn't training modules that mapped, we then very much focused on what do they do in their everyday job that would give them that competency. So we focused on that, and actually the feedback that's come back really highlights that as the major success of the program. That not only was it easier because we used that, but actually people feel rightfully validated. That they didn't have to prove, they had to prove themselves, but simply in the course of doing their normal job. They didn't have to jump off a cliff to prove that they can already do it.